right? So it sounds like I'm in between you guys and a cocktail, including one for myself, so I'm gonna have to keep this short. But what you see behind me is unrelenting and persevering. You have a person that refuses to lose, and you have another person that refuses to stop trying to win. Two different goals, same outcome. And that's where my story begins. So I'm about to age myself, but I'd like to say I aged well, like a fine wine. But here are a few things that got me from Atlanta, Georgia to California. A folder of CDs. I don't know if you guys remember those big-ass folders, and you slip all your CDs in there. A AAA triptych, you know, the paper kind, the stuff that's not on your smartphone, and a vision. And I managed to graduate into one of the worst economic times that I could remember. So I was struggling to find a summer job to make some money so I could move out to California and make a life for myself. So with all my frustration, I left. I went straight to a AAA office. And I said, make me a map from Atlanta to California. So we could end the story there, but I wouldn't tell you the part about how I then walked into my parents' house. I then told them, I'm leaving for California tomorrow. They said, how are you getting there? I pulled out my AAA map. I took a Sharpie that was sitting on the table. I put a dot on Atlanta, a dot on California, and I drew a line across the nation. I said, that's how I'm going to do it. Some of you in this room actually know my mom. She's this little Jamaican lady that's kind of hyper. So I went and I grabbed my CDs, my summer clothes, and I came back downstairs, and she said, you know, who's going with you? And I said, well, no one, but if you're going to try, you better speak now, forever hold your peace, because there's not a lot of room in the car. And of course, she jumped in. So she takes calling and playing hooky to a whole nother level, because she called in sick the next day to work to drive across the United States with me. So that's saying something, right? I think that's where I get it from. So we, the next morning, jumped in the car and took off. And she promised to help drive, so I thought, oh, you know, I came up, you know, that's a bonus. And 7 minutes into the drive, she's nodding off. So trouble in paradise, right? I was like, this isn't gonna go very well. So I said, man, this is gonna be a problem. Because I didn't plan to make a vacation out of this. I was ready to start my life. And I said, okay, well, clearly I'm gonna have to do the driving, all of it. So I drove 36 hours door to door, only stopping for food and water. And by food, I mean gas station chicken or chips. So I was heading to San Francisco, actually. That's where brands go to thrive, and I'm a marketer. So I wanted to go to a brand where I was gonna make a name for myself. I was gonna be a big CMO one day, and I was gonna kill it. And somewhere around Texas, I decided I'm not feeling that anymore. I'm not tied down by anything. So I think I'm gonna just like curb off here. I pulled out my paper map, had my mom lay it out, and I was like, tell me how to get to LA. So nearly 20 years later, I'm still there. And I have to say, it's not a decision that I regret, but I've, over the years, managed to capture this question constantly. You're always up to something, Rochelle. What are you doing now? What are you doing next? Like, how are you, you're always doing something different every time I see you. And that's exactly what I did. I went to LA and I threw myself into everything I possibly could because I wanted to learn. And I had my wins and I had my busts. But at the end of the day, I learned a ton. And the key to all of this was to get started. You can't do anything unless you start. But then even harder than that is to keep going. And in all the wins and all the losses, I had to keep telling myself, you have to keep going. So in one way or another, I've touched every organization on this board, whether I sat on the board, I worked for the company, or I went to school there, go Bears, or I founded the company. And it's the amount of learning that I captured from this one logo chart has been amazing to me. So here are some lessons that I learned along the way. And one that I find one of the most important of them all, which is to be fearless in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire. And I refuse to do anything that doesn't do just that for me. So when I was 24, I left a stable job, and I went with my boss at the time to work for a startup. He ended up having a massive open heart surgery out of nowhere, and the company ended up not flying. But I took a risk at 24 years old to go work for a startup. And I was like, what am I gonna do now? And so then I went to work for one of the largest advertising agency conglomerates in the world. And I did some fun things there, but then I decided I want a bigger challenge. I want to do something bigger. And so I left and I went to Activision without a signed offer letter to work on Call of Duty, because I wanted to work on the largest entertainment property of all time, because I was gonna learn from the best. And from there, I decided that wasn't enough of a challenge. I wanted to really, really force myself to dig in. So I left Activision to go to a turnaround at Quicksilver while I was in this very building taking a class in my MBA program. Well, that turnaround did not turn. And I got laid off. And I remember, being in a block, and I was like, wow, I don't have a job now. And I was like, this is a very real moment. And I took it as a personal point of failure in my professional career. And I felt like I had not done enough. I did something wrong. I hadn't done what I needed to do to get this company to turn. But I'm only one person, so there was a whole team involved. And it was my peer network at Haas, it was my family here, many of which are sitting in this room today, that helped get me through that. And I'm forever grateful for what I've captured from here. This is my family. And I picked myself up and I said, you have more work to do. And so I continued working hard to move beyond that. And the secret was I had to get started on the next thing. I couldn't let that get me down. And I had to remember to be myself. If you're unapologetically yourself, that's so much more interesting than anything else in the world. And don't sweat the small stuff. You gotta be brave and keep going. And that gets me to where I am today. So as Kelly mentioned, I'm a professor of entrepreneurship and marketing at Loyola Marymount University. And I also run my own venture called Optimist. And I decided, if you haven't caught it already, I'm an underdog, and I like to fight for the underdogs myself. So I decided to take all of those years of experiences and learning and all of the things I'd picked up along the way to help others. And what I decided to do is create a marketplace and give other hustling designers around the world a place to scale their own business, to share their craft with the world and tell their story. And that's how Optimist Made was born. A portion of the profits goes back to a charity in the country where I found the designer, because my goal is to create a network effect of giving back around the world. I don't want to just solve one problem, I want to solve many. I don't want to do it in one place, I want to do it as many places as possible. And the way that this came to me was in the power of an idea. The power of an idea can be measured by the degree of the resistance that it tracks. So I challenge you every single day with every single idea to make sure that it's resisted in some way. And I don't know if you guys know these stats up here, but we have 50 to 70,000 thoughts per day, 2 to 3,000 per hour, and 35 to 48 per minute. And guess what? It only takes one. It only takes one really good one to make it. So all along the way, I'm sure you can imagine my hyper-Jamaican mother, my parents were like, this girl is nuts. We made her, are you sure? And, at the end of the day, I'm like, look at me now. I'm one of several million entrepreneurs just trying to get a chance at making it, but there's a chance. I'm hanging on to that. So I just really implore you guys to remember that. With everything that's going around in your head, harness that one idea and run with it and keep going. And Martin Luther King Jr. said something that's always stuck with me. It keeps me going from one thing to the next every single day. And he said, if you cannot fly, then run. If you cannot run, then walk. If you cannot walk, then crawl. But you just have to keep moving forward. Thank you.